hand for Marie from Murrells Inlet, South Carolina.
Yeah. I'm Marie, I'm an alcoholic. This is not for crying, this is because I sweat up here. I get nervous. I told George, I said, every time I go to the podium, I forget to thank the committee. So I'm going to thank the committee because I want to, be remembered as somebody who did something right. But I just want to comment on what a good job you've done as a voice. Don't you all think she has? It's fabulous. My God, the speakers have been so wonderful, of course, up to now. And Deshu, I practiced saying your name all day every time I'd sneeze. Achu, Deshu. Thank you, darling. And when you talked about being different, and then Lucas talked about the spiritual pride. Well, I've been in my room all day doing inventories. I mean, I didn't come up here for that. I'm not one that talks to people who are well. I'm one that talks to people sick like me, because I have had to work this program on a daily basis ever since I came to AA. And it's not been easy. And I told one of the girls I sponsor, getting sober for me was one of the single hardest things I ever did, but my God, how rewarding it was. Because by everything that I know, I should be dead today and not up here sharing how I got sober. The way I lived, my sick thinking, my hatred of people, my lack of any kind of knowing how to live in a real world. I think the greatest thing about being sober today is that I live in reality today. I have no false notions of who I am. I'm a drunk that found a way to stay sober. And the people in my life, if I forget it, they will remind me real fast where I came from. And I'm one of those that, well, I'll just tell you my story and you'll figure it out. And I know that I'm to do that in a general way and tell you what happened, what it was like, what happened, what it's like today. And I came from an alcoholic family. My dad was a wino. I used to think I was going to become a winette that had a little ring to it. We were extremely poor, and I was so ashamed of that. Everywhere I went, I was so ashamed of that. And my daddy, on a Saturday night, like clockwork, would go to jail. Cops would come, he'd kick the table over, and off he'd go, and we were so happy because we went to the carnival when it was in town. So if something happened there, we took advantage of it. My mom and dad, there was no love in our family. No one ever said, I love you, or how are you, sweetie, or dear, or none of that. It was, I'll show you, and then the fireworks would start. My mom and dad used to take turns going to mental institutions. He would go because of his alcoholism, and she would go because of his alcoholism. And she would come home after her shock treatments, and she would be fairly well for a while. But I'm one of those that, as hard as I worked in AA to try to figure all that out, she died when I was 18 years sober, and I had made my amends to her, but I was still left with all the guilt because of those things that I said I was going to do and I didn't do. And I used to say, when she dies, I'll have peace. And she died and I didn't have peace. But because of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's been a healing taking place since then. And I wanted to say this because I talk fast and I forget, and I'm getting old and I forget. And I forget my place, but I got 100 I can start, so it doesn't make any difference. But I remember thinking, she loved us the best she could, and at the time was doing the best she could do. Because alcoholism, as I know it today, will strip a family of everything. And it did that to us. So when I was young, I would run away from home, always get caught. And back then, if you got caught running away from home and you told the police your tale of woe, they just went and told your mom and dad. There was none of this stuff we got today, I'll tell you. Nobody protecting me. And So finally it got to the point where there was no use to run away from home anymore. But I want to get to this. My first drink, I was 13 years old. I'm from West Virginia, and our taste of the town is moonshine up there, in case you didn't know it. And we were poor anyway, so to have moonshine was kind of a big thing. And I remember taking that drink and the room spinning, and that was it. That's all I remember. And that usually ended up like that every time I drank. So she found out about it. We went on this hayride, and I remember a hayride in West Virginia. You take hay, throw it on the pickup truck, you get you some beer, and you go out to the woods. And we went up on this hill, and back then everybody stole drip gas. You could smell it 5 counties away. It's unrefined gasoline. And so that's how the cops caught a lot of them. They could smell it, you know, in the vehicle. But anyway, I remember the police were involved, something happened, the cops were involved, and my mother saying, "I'm going to send you up the river." Now, I was 13, I think. And of course, I had a big fight with her because, you know, I didn't like her anyway. She didn't like me. Nobody liked anybody in our family. We just all grew up hating each other, you know. And so she made that comment, she's going to send me up the river, and I'm smarty pants saying, "Go ahead," you know. And I ended up being sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in a state reform school. And I got to tell you, I loved it. I loved it. They had stoves, refrigerators, sheets on the bed. They had it going on, boy. And my daddy was just like me when he would go to Weston or Lakin State Hospital, and back then they looked like asylums too. He would write letters how happy he was. And because we were away from my mom. We were tickled death. We didn't care where he sent us, you know. But anyway, I was there, and like I said, I loved it. And actually, I used that as my prep for my drinking somewhat, because people would talk about where they went to college. And I'd say, well, I went to Salem College. What I did, they'd pile us in a truck and take us to play basketball at the college. And then I got kicked off the team because I said, guard them, not kill them, that type thing. But anyway, and then I would use the arts. I would say, you know, well, I know Shakespeare, because at reform school we'd have to do little plays. And then I learned how to weave on a rug, not in the loony bin, this in reform school, I have to step up, you know. So, but all this stuff I would use. And then when I started sponsoring in AA, you know, I sponsored a little girl that was born into privilege. She's not here, but somebody here knows her. And she would talk about her education and all that, and I'd tell her I went to private schools, you know. So mine didn't cost quite as much, but I identified with that. And I can remember, this is a true story. I remember somehow I got in a straitjacket because they said I caused a riot, and I don't know what I did. I just started pulling drapes down or something. But this woman that I hated, I despised, I remember that's who I was calling out for while I was there. Anyway, to make a long story short, after I started that riot, they threw me in this room and locked me up. It was in the middle of February. There's no glass on the windows, and it was cold as a dickens outside. And guess what? I still didn't want to leave. I mean, that's how good it was. Eventually, I did get paroled, and I went back to my family, and nothing had changed. It had only gotten worse. My dad's drinking had gotten worse, and they had moved like 7 times in 3 months. Because when you're drunk like that and create all that havoc, they will throw you out, kids or not. I mean, it's just a different deal today. Back then, you know, you just lucky to get something to eat. But anyway, all this continued. So I go to this judge, and I said, I was 16, I think. I said, I want to go back to the reform school. I went to see him on my own. And he said, we can't send you back to the reform school. And my whole life and story is always one extreme to the other. So when he told me that, I remember my mom saying, "Here's $1.25, go get a 6-pack of beer." They knew how to shut me up, and I'd been happy with that. But anyway, when I went to him, he said, "We can't do this for you." So he ended up sending me to a cloistered monastery. I know. Well, at this reform school, I had to learn how to be one of the baddest girls in school. Now I had to learn how to become St. Teresa or something, And I remember I ran away the first night I was there, and I ended up staying there till I graduated, and it too I fell in love with, and it was just a beautiful place. Actually, when I was 17, I had a relationship with God that I would give anything to have that one that I had at that time today, because I've had to struggle so hard. The big book says it's harder for someone who's had something like that and lost it than someone who's never had it at all. And I identified with that. But I was so happy then. Well, anyway, it got time to go home, and they wouldn't let me go home, so I went up to my aunts in Ohio. They were just the opposite. Well, actually, my mom was like the black sheep of the family. She ran away from home. Everybody disowned us. We were across the tracks people. Well, anyway, I go up there, and my granddad has this big bohemian nightclub, and my aunt's very successful, and I'm thinking, you know what I'm thinking, I'm a drunk. I'm going, well, I've arrived now, and I remember sashaying up to that bar and getting one of those long neck bottles of beer and thinking it's all going to be okay now. Well, something happened one night, I don't know what it was, and I found some vodka or whiskey, I think it was whiskey, a pint of it. And I started drinking that, and then I started remembering the reason I didn't like all those people. The more I drank, the clearer it became. And somehow, the next thing I know, she not only moved me out of her house, she moved me to another town in Shelby, Ohio. So there I go. I'm kicked out of this town. Now I'm up there. I'm only 18 at this time. I got a long ways to go. And so I go up there, and I remember it was 63, and my heroes at that time were Dr. Kildare, Ben Casey, and John Kennedy. I'm sorry, but that time he's my hero, because they had that family unit, and I wanted so bad to look like Jackie Kennedy. I loved them. And, of course, he got assassinated, and I remember locking myself up and just getting drunk for 3 days by myself in my first little apartment ever. So I decided, from there I think I just need to go join the convent, just become a nun. So there was a bad snowstorm, and I put this is all true, by the way, put my galoshes on. Well, sometimes when I tell something, just because I think it's true don't mean it is. It's what I remember, But anyway, I went down there, and I talked to Mother Superior and told her what I wanted to do, and she must have smelled the booze on me because I'd been to a party. And she said, "Maria, my dear, when you find your place in this world, you come back." And I thought, well, I found my place, but obviously I did. Today I have. It's in Alcoholics Anonymous. So anyway, that's not working for me. So I remember thinking I'm going to go back to West Virginia because I was in Ohio. And I packed everything up, went back, took a cab to go home. Now, I want to tell you what I looked like. I had gloves on, white gloves, fake fur around my neck like Jackie, pillbox hat, and a little bag, just exactly like her. And I tell the cab driver, he said, "Where do they live?" I said, "I don't know, I think there." Looked like a place they would live. Well, it wasn't where they lived. They lived in a place that had been condemned. And I'm thinking, oh, God. If you did that today, you wouldn't walk out alive. But I'd go, "Hey, Mom, I'm home, and I'm in the wrong house," But anyway, so I go there, and I find out that everything is going down the drain fast. The only thing that was exciting there was that's when I saw the Beatles on TV, and I thought, they just come over here. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, But anyway, so what happened? I'm there. Their porch caves in, makes front page of the newspaper, and all this big thing I'm preparing for everybody just goes right down the drain, So one of my girlfriends called and said, "Let's go." They had a farm, and we went out to their farm, and on the way back, we pulled into this drive-in called the Ponderosa on Sissonville Road in West Virginia. And this guy got out of this 50 model Ford station wagon. He was drunk, had a tooth knocked out, a black eye, and on crutches. And I remember him saying, "You had the prettiest brown eyes." And then I got pregnant, then I got married. And I always like to insert I was a virgin, so I was looking for the perfect one. So anyway, he stood me up on our first date. When we got married, there was 4 of us that got married that night. And I had a little Tupperware chest. I called it my Tupperware hopeless chest. But anyway, he had a date that night, so he took me home and went out on his date. True story. I got to inject this. This is the truth, too. When throughout the relationship, he ended up, I have 2 of these kids were mine, but there was 21 children he had out there. So when I get a newcomer and they talk about their husbands cheating on them, I go, "How many times?" They go, 2. I go, "That's a piece of cake." Oh, God. I can't believe I'm telling all this. So anyway, we hooked up. It didn't work. He found it necessary to leave with the redhead, but I would have made a perfect Al-Anon back then, because I would get all the stuff on the floor like I've been talking to my lover on the phone, and pull his beer cans out like I'd been drinking. And I even did my hair one time. I thought, well, maybe I had real dark hair, and I said, maybe if I was a blonde, he would like me. And I bleached my hair, but I forgot there was something called a toner that you put. So he'd come home, and I was sort of a light green, Then we'd do things like we'd have fights, and then he'd lock himself in the bathroom, and I'd get the hammer and try to get him out and beat him up with the lightweight part of the Electrolux cleaner and all this stuff. And then I was pregnant, and I remember they came and got me. I'd made my little dress. I forgot that until later on. But anyway, they come and got me, and he had me arrested, and I was pregnant. And I remember going to jail. They said, "We can't take you to jail." And I went, "You're going to take me to jail. Don't ever go to jail if you're pregnant. It stinks. The food sucks." Anyway, the next day, the judge let me go home. And so anyway, we parted company right then. And after all that happened, I said, I think I'm just going to, I'm just going to go find a job. I'm just going to do something different. And I remember I saw an ad in the newspaper, and it said, "Bunnies wanted," and I went, "Oh." So for me, I had to work hard just to pass attractive, but I went up there, and I think drunks could talk their way into anything, But anyway, I got the job, and I was just on cloud 9. Now I was a bunny, not Hugh Hefner bunny, but close to it. But anyway, so that started a whole new thing. I mean, my alcoholism, I didn't even know I was an alcoholic. All I knew was I'd seen that movie, The Days of Wine and Roses, and when she looked out over that harbor and she said the world looks so dirty, I remember identifying with that. I remember identifying with her, and that whole movie just fascinated me. It's the only place I ever heard about Alcoholics Anonymous was in that movie when he went to see in the nut house. He was in the nut house. And when he tore that place up, I identified with that anger. It's amazing how I identified with all that. But yet, on the other hand, just clear as a bell, I didn't see there was anything wrong with me. I was fine, just if somebody would just give me what I wanted, nice things, that type of thing. But anyway, after that happened, it just, going to jail. I never went to jail like a lady. I always went handcuffed and in a paddy wagon. And there was nothing glamorous about my drinking. I bartended a long time, and I did waitress work a long time. And then a woman took an interest in me, and she said, again, one extreme to the other, "Marie, I want you to come to work for me." And I went, "Oh, okay." So I left the nightclub bar scene I'd been in for years and went to work for the Girl Scout Council. That was troublesome for them because they would get phone calls about possible OD, had been drinking. When you're drinking, you get I'd get your husband mixed up with my boyfriend, and you know how it goes. And they would get all that down, and it just went from bad to worse. So then she left there. I'm trying to hurry up with this. She left there and she went to work for the governor's office, and she took me with her. And I'm going to cut to the chase now. That lasted. I was in the Department of Education, and I worked for her, and I had my own state car. I had the briefcase, like you heard in the podium. I had arrived, and I was as sick as anybody I know. And my job was to go around and prepare SBA loan packages. Now, think about that one. I'm dealing with figures, right? So I couldn't do that, so I just dated the guy that approved all the loans, and it worked. One day I was in Wheeling, West Virginia, and something happened in my body. I had never had DTs. I'd never had, if I shook, I took a little pill and calmed right down, And I remember leaving, and I went to a bar and I ordered a couple of drinks. It didn't work, and I went to a liquor store, and I remember being in this downstairs bathroom just guzzling that stuff down. Like when I'd go to work at the Capitol, I would get on the elevator and they'd say, "I smell alcohol." It was coming through my pores and I didn't know it. I'd go, "It's mentholyptus," or "It's this," or "It's that," make some kind of excuse. But anyway, I ended up, praise God, I hope, for my last drunk. I ended up, I don't know how I got home. They took me. They thought later I was on drugs, but I wasn't. I wasn't a druggie. I was a full-blown drunk. Booze is my deal. It got me where I wanted to be. And I remember waking up in prior to that, I ended up at home, and then I called AA. I gave it another A. I said, "Call AAA." I don't know where that came from. But I heard two women coming up my steps, and one said, "Al-Anon H. This is an alcoholic if I ever saw one." And they were coming up the steps, and I was standing there with a big piece of wood that wasn't really there, but a big piece of wood, and I was pecking on it, trying to figure out how to fold that into my hide-a-bed. You can fold wood when you're going into DTs. And so they get me dressed out of bed, and then I'd crawl back in bed. And I remember I just bought this nightgown, and it was hot pink. It said, "Baby, light my fire," all the way to the floor. And that's how I went to detox. I go to detox. I was there for 5 days, and I was detoxed with Librium and whiskey. Now, I'm a drunk, and I walk in, and they hand me a jar of whiskey, and I go, you don't get any better. Get a lay around and say, well, I ended up on the third day having something called delayed DTs. I know now that's when they withdrew me from everything. Of course, I had to report everybody for drinking, the doctors, nurses, and big parties going out. You couldn't sleep. Next day I looked at it was DuPont. Wasn't a big party. I swore there was a third floor. There wasn't. But that was so bad that it kept me sober my first year. Then I remember they came to get me to take me to a meeting, and I said, "You're not taking me anywhere. You're not forcing me to do anything." So they're coming down the hall, and I remember this one woman said, "Oh, okay." They just around, walked off. There was something in me for a split second that said, "If you don't go with them, something's going to happen." And I remember yelling at them saying, "Well, if you're not going to force me, I guess I'll go," And I went to my very first meeting, and I remember some guy, what I heard was his Jeep was in a tree and all this stuff, and I'm thinking, he needs to be here, not me. I'm not like that. I was shaking so bad. And at the end of the meeting, they all held hands, and I'm thinking, the shame that I had about I didn't even remember the Lord's Prayer. But I didn't want them holding my hand either, but they never let it go, I tell you. And there was a woman that stayed after the meeting that night, and her name was Betty A. She had 6 years sobriety, and she gave me my big book. I have that big book today. I have it. I've had new people say to me, "Why don't you get a new book?" I went, "Why in God would I get a new book?" That book means everything in the world to me, and I've had it ever since I've been sober. And I went into detox, I guess I got to tell you my sobriety date, March the 8th of 79. So I've had that book for 43 years. And gee, I didn't know I'd get applause for that. Anyway, that started, I went to my first meeting. I remember sitting there, and if there's any new women in here tonight, please hear this. I went to my first meeting. They gave me the little lecture on the he and she and AA, and I thanked them and dismissed them. You know how we do. And I fell apart that night, and I thought they were going to rush me to the hospital, and they go, it'll get better. You know, there was no pity for me when I got sober. Consequently, I don't have it for anybody else, you know. So anyway, that night after I got home, I got this phone call, and it said, Marie, would you like to have some company? I'm so-and-so, I'm 14 years sober, and I'm a counselor. And I went, my God, I knew I'd get the best, the cream of the crop. And I said, of course I would. And I remember he came up, and as clean as I can make it, everything I needed to know about AA, I got that night. You figure it out. If you're slow, I'll explain it after the meeting. But anyway, but here's what happened. I thought that they were separated. And the only reason they were separated because she must have let go of him or something. But anyway, I was coming out of a meeting. It was a tape meeting up in West Virginia, and I had the 4-inch heels on and I call it my early sleeves, skin-tight pants, purple satin, long hair, swishing that hair. You know how to do it when you're new, you know. And I walk out of that meeting, I'm so proud because I'm with Mr. Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm new, and they know I'm important because I'm with him, you know. But anyway, this is a true story, Sam. He dropped down to the ground. Well, I dropped down to the ground and waddling. I'm thinking, do what we do, go where we go, you know. And when I came back up, he was gone, but when I came back up, all I saw was a gun pointed at me over this yellow Pinto, and I'm like this, and she let 6 bullets right over my head. Think about that when you see that new hottie in here. You want to take a chance. You better look around and check your surroundings. Well, anyway, I'll start running. I'm coming out of an AA meeting. I'm doing everything y'all tell me to do. He left out the I'm married part, you know. I'm thinking I'm important. So anyway, I start running up the boulevard, and those 4-inch heels get shorter and shorter and shorter. And she pulls up behind me. She catches me around this church. I don't know where the bullet's going to come from, but deep down inside, I know I deserve it. Now I'm mad at AA because, you know, I'm mad at you people because y'all are supposed to look after me. And anyway, she comes up over that curb and tells me no uncertain terms what she would do to me if she ever found this out again. And I would have cut off anything to give to her just to get rid of her, you know. But anyway, right down the street, there was a club that I used to drink in all the time. And I'd already called this cab to come and get me. And it was like, do I go there? Do I go there? And I remember that cab driver was real, and I say it and it's true. They do not like to take you home if somebody's been shooting at you, you know. So anyway, when I got, when I got home, he was on the telephone, and something told me before that if I went to that bar, I would never come out again. That was it. My chances were over. And so I decided, I ain't nervous, I'm jerking up here. So I decided that when I got that phone call from him 3 weeks later, and here's how it went. Marie, my place is with her. And all I could picture was a round table with a candle in the middle of it, like in a beer joint, a booth. You know, that's what I was left with. And today, I'm one of those, especially in our own group, if you go after a new woman, you got to go through some of us to get to her because her life is on the line. I was at the court of last resort, and there's some in here can verify that. There sits one. But anyway, after this was over, I picked up the phone and I remember I was so upset because now, again, it's just me. I'm alone. There's nobody, no help, nothing. And I called that woman you know that woman, every group's got one. You can't stand her when you're new. She thinks she knows everything, and she just runs everything, and, you know, so sweet to you, and you just want to bop them one, you know. And So I called her and I said, you told me if I ever wanted to get sober to call you. And God bless her. She was my sponsor for 36 years until she died a few years ago. And I'll be real honest with you. I've got a sponsor today. It's been a struggle because I have to do it all over again. I have to tell you where I'm at. And she knew me. I could open my mouth. She'd say, I know what you're dealing with again, you know. And what a joy she was in my life, and how she loved me. And I would spend all hours of the night. She'd tell me about Bill, Bob, you know, I mean, Dr. Silkworth, and she's the one that got me loving Dr. Silkworth. And I heard it today up here. The reason I drank was just for the effect produced by alcohol. But he told me I was mentally incompetent, that I was in full flight from reality. He told me all that stuff. And you're reading that like, who in the world told you about me? But anyway, I started working with her, and she took me through the steps, and I got involved in my first meeting. I don't know why, but they took me 77 miles out of town to the meeting. But the rumor was out of what had happened, you know. And of course, I got to say this because I'll forget it too. There's still hope left, you know. I wasn't giving up. I met a guy in AA. That guy was not George, but George and I met, and we dated 6 weeks, and we got married, and I was 5 months sober. Don't recommend that for anybody. But I wanted to be sober more than anything else, and I watched that man's example through all. I didn't even fall in love with him for 3 years, because I didn't think he was just, you know, he was filling in the gaps. I didn't know that you could really love me. I didn't know that. And so then I found out that, and I got to say, my George he is everything to me. I fall in love with him over and over and over again. But the last 2 months, I could kill him on every day for some reason. We've been going through some sicknesses in the family, and I'm trying to learn how to be that person that just accepts everything. I don't like it when he's sick, and I can be mean about that, not to him, but just mean, because I want it my way. You know, but I learned from every experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, see, I done lost my place. Where was I? You weren't listening either, were you?
You just married George.
Just married George. And anyway, come August, we will have 43 years. Where is my George? Okay, so I married George, and then we ended up moving to Myrtle Beach. We've been down there ever since, and then we got active. We went to meetings everywhere. Anywhere there was a door open, we went to AA meetings. I got involved in my home group. Congratulations to all the GSRs in here and the DCMs. God bless you. Because you are our contact with the world of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got involved as a GSR, and I kept going and going and going, and I got involved at the state level, and it's just the most, if you think you're popular and loved, get into service, you know. They'll show you real fast how important you think you are, you know. But anyway, through all of that, my love for Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't have to tell you I love AA. You love AA. You wouldn't be here. But I am a fierce believer in the power of the 12 steps, which I haven't even had time to talk about. But I know this, on any given day in my life, any given day, if I've got a problem, I know there's a solution for it. It's just that I forget that, and I want to stay in my crap. You know, I was serious when I say I don't talk to people that are well. I talk to people like me, because I have to do this stuff every day. I am not who I want to be today, but I'm so much better than who I used to be. And the book says the most exciting years of my existence lie ahead. One day when I was 15 years sober, I picked up the big book and I said, I'm going to turn to this, and whatever it says is what I'm going to do. And lo and behold, it told me if I would walk with the newcomer in the path of spiritual progress, remarkable things would come to happen. And I would presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what my present circumstances. And I took that to the bank. And that's the only paragraph I know in the big book, and I'm 3rd edition. It's page 100. And it promised me that. And guess what? It happened. You know, it always gets better. And if I go to step 1, If I'm got, and I've been doing it a lot, I have to do this on a daily basis and look to see where I am powerless. Have I forgot I'm powerless over alcohol? I'm powerless over people, places, and things, most of them. And I have to look at the unmanageability in my life. Then I have to go on down and I have to ask myself, have I been restored to sanity? Where is that power in my life? You know, because I just knew, because my parents were in mental institutions, that was going to happen to me. I mean, straitjacket's a pretty good indicator you're going to have a problem, you know, on down the road. I have never been treated by a professional, except the shrinks I saw say you should write a book, you know, that type thing. That didn't help me. You know, what helped me was that one-on-one with that woman in Alcoholics Anonymous that says, I know how you feel. And I'll take it a step further. I believe with any drunk, and I love the drunks in my life, I can't say, do you know how I feel? I say, can you feel how much I love you? Because they are what breathe life back into me, and they do it today. And I'm fortunate today that I have a lot of women that I love in my life. So whenever that insanity starts back in me again, I got to believe that power is going to take care of that. I have to move on to 3, and I have to ask God to relieve me of the bondage of self. That's where I just cook in that stuff. You know, it's just me, what I want, make it for me, yada, yada, yada. And until I can crawl out of that with God's help, latch on to somebody else to work with, that's where the victory is. That's what they're talking about. To me it is. You know, I had to go crawl back through my past and step forward. I spent my whole life running from that. And now AA's asking me to look at all that. Why do you want to look at something you spend a lifetime running for? It didn't make sense to me. But when I looked at it and I went back and I wrote it all down, and I'm not one that can just make a list. I had to write my whole story because I saw into action, it said, all the newcomers only got drunk because we only thought we'd lost our ego. We only thought we had done this. We only thought we had done that. And it said nothing counted until we told somebody else all our life story. And I did that. And I was so sick at 10 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had the husband, I had the new house, I had the thriving business. I was working with people, I was talking at AA conventions, I was in service, I was doing all that. I was waking up every day not caring if I lived or died at 10 years sober. And I remember talking to this old timer, and he said, Marie, don't you get it? There's such a difference between action and activity. I was into the activity and no action on me, and it almost killed me. And I had to, that's when I went back and I redid everything. I did the inventory. I took it a step further. Into 12 and 12, it says, we suggest you write out our questions and our answers. It'll be your first tangible proof of trying to move forward. And I wrote out every single question and every single answer because I had to get help. I had to get better. I wasn't running outside, and I know we had plenty outside help because I know what I was going to get once I got this completed. And then when I had made those lists, cause and effect, and my part in it is where the problem was. I got a part in everything that happens to me. Everything that happens to me. Old Bryant B. used to say, I'd say, well, look what I did after all I've done. He'd say, was I not self-seeking even though trying to be kind? Because somewhere I had always made a decision based on self that later placed me in a position to become hurt. And once I got all that done, I had to take all that and I had to dump it on somebody, and I couldn't get to my sponsor that day, so I chose a closed-mouthed member of my home group because it had to be somebody that had to see me on a daily basis. And I roared all that stuff out. Everything. I could feel my face burning. Stuff, I'd never done an inventory, a real one for me like this before. And I remember them saying at the end, said, Marie, you're still saying, am I good enough for you now? Will you love me now? And I remember leaving there, getting in I had a little pickup truck for the business, and I drove over to the beach. I had listed every single defect of character I found. I read them out loud to God at that beach. I owned what I did, and I got rid of it. I thought they were going to disappear, but they didn't, you know. It says, when he says remove them, he's just taking it from here and keeping it over there, because it's always going to come back. That my 10th step tells me that. But anyway, then I went on and I did my 6, 7, that list. The hardest thing about that list, it talks to you about it. About 8 and 9, it's the obstacles that I'm going to run into. The biggest is that of forgiveness. I want you all to forgive me, but I won't forgive you. Or if I do, I want you to remember I forgave you, that type thing. And then to go on down and to have the beauty, and you heard from the podium, the beauty of the 10th and 11th, the maintenance steps. I know that I have to do this on a daily basis. I do my 10 steps. Sometimes it's an hour or two, day or two, a few minutes here and there. But I'll come up and I'll end up getting it done, because that's, if I don't get rid of that stuff, it's just going to fester and it's going to be terrible. The 11th step, I didn't know how to pray and meditate. I did what it said in 12 and 12. I used prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, and it's not that, I didn't look at him as a saint, I looked at it as what people told me. He's just a guy that had a rough time, and when he got to the other side of all this inner conflict, this is what he found out about himself. And I went, wow. So I started saying, I wonder what it'd be like for me to comfort you instead of everybody always having to comfort me. And I took each one of them like that, and it helped me immensely. And 12, you betcha I had some spiritual awakenings. I still have them. Thank God I still have them, because I still get in trouble. I still have to find a solution. I still have to do the same things today that I did when I came the first time. And I was always told that if you don't ever leave the basics, you don't have to go back to them, But I found myself many times returning to the basics, like I'm going to start over. I'm going to start over. I'm going to start over, And George always told me, he said, the power that we need is in step 11. That's where I get my power, But anyway, and I'm working with others. I work with others. My biggest problem is personalities before principles, because if I get a little thing in there, I think I know more than you do about something or whatever, I can get myself in a real jam, So I have to try to practice humility. And I don't make it real holy. I make it real simple. My sponsor said, humility is simply remaining teachable. And if I remain teachable, I'm going to have a chance to stay a member in good standing to the beautiful fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for that, I can never be grateful enough. Thank you.
I'm hot too. I'm like,